So I could have kept writing classified briefings for the Pentagon. I could have kept sending threat assessments to people in power. And I did that for decades. Here's what I learned. Briefings change how one person thinks. If you're lucky, briefings change how 10 people think. Sometimes, if it's a really important briefing, it changes how 100 people in government think. But it doesn't change how civilization thinks. And when your threat operates on civilizational timescales, you need civilization to think differently. You need millions of people, not hundreds, thinking about the problem. There's a reason every great warning about existential threat, from climate fiction to pandemic stories to AI thrillers, get told as narrative instead of data. Data tells you what happened. Stories tell you why it matters. Stories make you feel stakes. And feeling stakes is what changes behavior. When I modeled solar storm scenarios, I could write a Carrington-class solar event with a 30% weakened magnetosphere would trigger Kessler syndrome cascades, resulting in permanent LEO destruction and 18+ months of critical infrastructure outage. That's accurate. That's terrifying to a physicist. But it doesn't tell you what happens to a hospital when the power goes out. It doesn't tell you what happens to a mother trying to feed her children when supply chains collapse. It doesn't tell you what happens to human civilization when the systems we depend on fail simultaneously. That's what fiction does. Let me show you something on this timeline. This is a timeline of AI development from 2010 to 2025. Now, it starts down here at Stanford's core NLP in 2010, which kind of changed the direction and started this ball rolling. But the following year, in 2011, a version of Google Brain introduced context awareness to AIs. I recognized at that point that that was going to cause the AI capability curve to become logarithmic. But I wasn't sure how logarithmic or how deep the curve would be. So between 2011 and 2012, I modeled based on what I knew about this, and I said, let's be aggressive. Let's make it, look like things are really, really bad. So let's push that curve up really high. And it produced what I thought was an aggressive curve that landed way out there around 2030-ish. And it turns out that I was wrong. The AI capability curve from this advancement combined with the quantum computer advancements that I knew about. The top one is public AI development. The bottom one is my classified work. And these two, the two danger areas of the threat assessment are the red bar. So these two things combined together to accelerate what was happening. And in 2014, I did another model. And if this trajectory from what had happened continued, the model said that by 2019 to 2020, AGI adjacent would arrive. Now, of course, 2020 was the year of the pandemic. That didn't happen for a lot of reasons. But my model in 2014 didn't take into account what is the big thing right now, and that is the Google Transformer architecture, which ushered in the modern LLM era that we are in. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, those 3 years leading up to the pandemic, a lot of development, BERT, several other things. When the pandemic happened, they continued to develop those, and in 2022, which was right after the recovery, ChatGPT was introduced, and the following year, GPT-4 was introduced. And last year, 2024, the scaling continued. It was accelerating, and I was involved in the AI safety policy development for the Biden administration, which was reversed by the Trump administration. And so that brings us to 2025, where what I considered an aggressive estimate turns out to be conservative, and reality is accelerating. Now, we're not at AGI yet, or the point that my original model said that we would be at, but we're closer than my original aggressive model predicted. And I was trying to overestimate. The point isn't that I was a perfect predictor. The point is I saw the trajectory, I understood the physics, and I understood the timeline. And I understood that if I just published papers about it, maybe 1,000 researchers would read them. Maybe it would influence policy in small ways. But if I wrote a story about what happens when that timeline converges with solar threats and failing infrastructure, millions of people read stories. Here's the thing about being a threat modeler. You see bad futures. You run scenarios where everything breaks at once. You understand, really understand, what cascading failure looks like. And once you understand that, you can't understand it. So you have a choice. You can stay silent. You can keep your threat models classified and secure in the knowledge that you did your job. You can tell yourself that the people in power know what you know. Or you can decide that if people in power aren't acting like they understand the threat, then maybe they don't. Maybe the threat model needs to reach more people. Maybe it needs to reach everyone. That's when you write fiction. My trilogy isn't a guess about the future, it's an extrapolation of the present, grounded in real science and real threat modeling. The solar storms, real physics. The magnetic field weakening, real and accelerating. The AI capability curve, real and faster than expected. The infrastructure vulnerabilities, real and documented. The story, that's where I integrated them. That's where I showed you what happens when all these systems fail at once. What happens when an intelligence, artificial, not human, decides that the only way to save civilization is to force civilization to change. I didn't write fiction because I ran out of data. I wrote fiction because data alone wasn't enough. We needed a story. We needed stakes. We needed to feel what's coming so we could choose something different. That story is ready, and it's time to tell it. The Sky Fire Trilogy launches January 15th, but you can start right now with Book 1, The Long Count. Pre-order today. Read about a civilization that didn't prepare, and then ask yourself, what will we choose?